It is replaced with a 41.7 cent per gallon wholesale tax. So we're eliminating the sales tax, we're eliminating the 19-cent gas tax and putting in a 41-cent tax. At $3.18, what you're talking about is about a 4-cent gas tax increase at the pump. We're a little bit below that, so add a couple more cents onto that. The rate, unlike the current 19-cent per gallon that's been stuck there since 1997, the rate will be adjusted annually. It will be based on changes in the wholesale price of gasoline that is calculated over a year's period of time. The rate cannot go down, and it will go up by the rate of inflation, but it can never go up by more than 5 cents per year. What you are probably going to see on a yearly basis is that 41.7% being increased by the rate of inflation annually is the most likely scenario. The sales tax is going to be increased from 6 to 7%. Let's get this straight. None of the money from the sales tax is going to fund transportation, except for a very, very de minimis amount. That is, so when people say we're voting to increase the sales tax to fund our roads, we are not. Because we are exempting gasoline from sales tax, this is to fill the hole that is created by not collecting that money on gasoline. And the hole is caused in the schools, in the cities and townships, and that's where the majority of this money is going, to replace the money that is lost by exempting gasoline from sales tax. It does generate more money than that, and we'll talk about where that comes in. It creates an additional $300 million that would go to school aid. So it replaces what is lost and adds $300 per year onto it. And these are simple estimates based upon how much stuff you all buy in the next year. It would also increase revenue sharing to our cities, villages, and townships by about $95 million a year. There's about an additional $250 million, maybe a little bit more than that, that goes to the state general fund, and we'll talk about where that money is going to go. Other issues that are going to happen. Remember how I talked about the fact when you buy that new vehicle that you're paying the registration fee based on the price and then it's depreciated 10% for 3 years? This eliminates that 3-year depreciation. So when you buy that vehicle, your registration fee will be based upon that first year sales price, and it will stay at that for as long as you own the vehicle. That will generate about $45 million additional per year. Also, trucks and commercial vehicles do not pay their license plates based upon the value of the vehicle. They pay them based upon the weight. And in particular, this ratchets up, especially at the high end. For the heaviest vehicles, significantly increases the registration fees that they have to pay and adds another $50 million on top of that. And registration fees, if you own electric vehicles, you're going to have to pay an extra fee, and I think it's like $50. You have to pay that extra fee in order to register those to help offset the fact that you're not paying for roads when you pay for gas. So we also are going to collect more taxes. We are going to make sure that more people who are selling items on the internet collect sales tax on behalf of the state. So when you're out there and placing that order and it's being delivered to your home, that they are going to tack on sales tax. That's called Main Street Fairness, that it helps those local businesses that if you go and buy it from them, you have to pay the sales tax. So if you're going to buy it over the internet, you have to pay sales tax as well. I was talking about where does the state general fund money go? It is being returned back to over 500,000 households in this state to expand the earned income tax credit. That is a program that was established at the federal level for low-income wage earners, where you can receive a tax credit based upon the size of your family and how much money you make. and the state is returning this program to where it was just a few years ago, where you will receive a credit equal to 20% of what your federal tax credit is. So all told, what we're looking at here is for transportation revenues, an additional $1.3 billion per year. Of that amount, we expect about $1.2 billion to go back into roads, and they will be distributed under the current formula, which sends back basically 40% to the county road agencies and about 20% to the city road agencies, and the state keeps about 40% for its responsibilities on roads. The other amount that goes out is $130 million, which you might notice is 10%, which is established in the state constitution for alternative transit issues. So that's going to pay for anything from our bus systems, anything you can think of other than you using your car on the road, that we are allowed to put in up to 10% of that money into transit. The one thing you probably have not heard much about is that in the first year of the $1.3 billion, over $800 million of that is not going to go into the roads. It's going to go pay off the bonds. Remember Mike was talking about how, the first 5 years after the road tax went up, we did all these wonderful programs. We did it because we borrowed up to the gills to pay for those programs. This state still has $2 billion in bonds out on those roads that Mike was putting asphalt down for in the year 2000. We are paying $200 million a year out of the transportation fund to pay off those bonds that, as Mike will say, are on roads that are now starting to hit into the poor condition. In the second year, we will be paying $400 million out of the $1.3 billion into the state to pay off bonds. So it will pay off most of the bonds that the state currently holds. There is some reasonableness to this in the fact that I'm not sure Mike could gear up in 4 months to spend all the new money that he was going to get under this proposal. Believe it or not, it actually takes a while to engineer something. Right, Mr. Boss? So what this will see for our local road agencies is a significantly gearing up of the money that they can put into roads. And as Mike pointed out, in the case of Livingston County, the road commission would go from about $12 million a year to $21 million a year. And the best part is, whereas now Mike can only take $1 million of that and get it back into roads, chances are of that $8 million, he's going to probably be able to put 80 or 90% of that back into asphalt because the basics are being paid for. The roads are already being plowed, they're being salted, the basic maintenance is being taken care of. So, again, I'm going to recap. Taxes, sales tax on gasoline is eliminated. The current 19 cents is eliminated. We put a 42 cent tax on gasoline. We increase the sales tax from 6 to 7%, but we're not going to tax gasoline anymore. What does that mean? $1.3 million for transportation, $300 million for schools, $100 million for our cities, and additional tax credits of about $260 million to low-income wage earners. And Steve, you're going to get into the questions and answers.
Stay up here. Come on up, gentlemen. Now we're going to open the floor for 10 minutes.
Nobody's going to get questions about the taxes.
Before we break out into two groups to discuss road conditions and tax policies more in depth. If you have a question, please stand and raise your hand, and the lovely Allison will bring a microphone to you.
I knew you had a question.
I kind of like this one.
Oh, I like it, okay, you know that.
We have one of the things that happened with the state with revenues, they've increased 20% since the Granholm years. Our entire budget is now up to about 52 billion instead of 42 billion. Now I know the reason why they can't take it for the transportation issues per se is because of the constitutional limitations and the 81% of the budget that's earmarked, which is the whole problem to begin with. How come, if we're amending, this is more for our legislators from the past term, how come do we have the earmarks not being changed? We have business as usual with the earmarks with this proposal because we're amending the Constitution if we vote yes. But the problem hasn't changed. We're going to have the same problem a few years now because all the funds are limited in the box.
And Dan, if there was a member of the past legislature here, I'm sure they'd speak out full-throatedly that they're not a bill.
As much as we want to talk about revenues being earmarked, transportation is one of those budgets over the last 50 years where all of the money was specifically dedicated to transportation purposes. And in fact, a lot of people have been asking the question, well, if all this money is going in, how do I know it's actually going to go to transportation? Because we do have those constitutional requirements that says if you put a tax on gasoline or on diesel, it must go to transportation. And yes, it becomes an issue in terms of the flexibility of the state legislature to deal with appropriations. But in this particular case, people want to make sure that if they're voting to put more money into roads, that more money is going into roads. And yes, this proposal has more money in things like schools. But one of the problems that we have had, I didn't show, is for the last couple of years, the state has put in some general fund money, which means that that becomes very political. And the only reason why the state has been putting that money in is basically the state doesn't even have enough money to meet federal matching requirements to get the money from the federal government. And they've had to put in more money from the general fund because we've been frozen so long, they didn't have enough money just to meet federal match to increase their money 5 to 1.
Let me hitchhike on that a little bit because here's something you have to bear in mind. One of the reasons a long time ago this money was put in constitutionally restricted funds was not only so that it got spent on the roads, but so that there was that 3 and 4 year period where you can make plans, buy right away if the road is being expanded, do all those other things. If transportation were subject only to annual appropriations that might go up, might go down, you would not have that ability to make those long-term plans. So that's part of the nexus here on how transportation funding comes together in Michigan.
Could you also explain how the lack of money available for federal matching funds affected the final leg of the M59 Boulevard conversion? Because that's something that most all of them should know.
Well, let me respond to that, but first let me just add one more point. Back to part of this gentleman's question. In order for the road commission or any city to get paid, you have to fill out a form every year and send it to the state that says, this is how I spent the money that you gave me. This is how much I received, and this is what I spent it on. And that gets all put together. It's required to be done